Welcome to heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It. My name is Mike Chisholm. As always, I'm a broken friggin' record when I talk about this. I'm excited to be here. I love doing these podcasts so much. If you haven't subscribed to heCast yet, please subscribe. If you haven't shared it, please share it. And most importantly, if you haven't downloaded the He Changed It app yet, what the heck are you waiting for? Download the app, Android, iPhone. It's available. It's growing. The He Changed It movement is happening. We appreciate everybody who is supporting this thing so far, and you ain't seen nothing yet. I love conversations with people, being able to pick their brain about the things that we think about human nature, talking about some of the things that we don't necessarily talk about all the time, and then doing it with people who have different insights, almost people who I can live vicariously through, is one of my favorite things about this experience so far. We've got 80 something episodes under our belt. I'm really excited when I can talk to somebody who I viewed from afar, maybe recently or not so recently, because I'm in my 40s now. Today's guest is one of those people. Today's guest is a former member of a band that, in my viewpoint, was the golden age of music. I believe that the 1990s were a time where I don't even look back at some of that music and call it classic rock. Like, it's just so pivotal when it comes to music, when it comes to things like Nirvana or Pearl Jam or some of these other bands that came along and changed everything. And then you had other bands that would come along and say, well, we're going to take a genre and we're going to knock it on its head and make it modern. There was a band in Canada that did that with blues, and it was called Wide Mouth Mason. Wide Mouth Mason was a band that filled my ear holes all the time. I listened to a radio station called CFox, and they were on there all the time. I would go to different festivals and see these guys playing with some of the biggest bands on the planet. Wide Mouth Mason is a band that was formed in Saskatoon, in my opinion, one of the friendliest cities in Canada. And these guys went on and had some crazy, crazy, crazy adventures. Today, we have one of the founding members of Wide Mouth Mason, somebody who has then left that band, spread his own wings, and fronted and created and founded another band called the Steadies, who is taking another genre, reggae, and knocking it on its ear in such a wonderful, wonderful way. His name is Earl Pereira. Earl, thank you for taking time to be part of heCast today. I am so excited to be talking to you, man.
Oh, I'm excited. Thanks, Mike. I'm so glad this worked out, man. And I love Kelowna and I love podcasts, so this is great. Love music.
Oh God. Well, okay, let's talk about let's go there for a second. And I'm not going to bogart this whole thing with Wide Mouth Mason, but I'd like to start there little bit.
Yeah, we might as well go from back to the beginning, you know.
Was I right when in your opinion, we're the same age.
Yeah.
The 90s were a golden age for music, right?
Absolutely. I think definitely in general, for rock, especially in pop rock, but in Canadian rock, I think the late 90s to this day, even if you ask a 20-year-old, it's the best Canadian era of music ever.
Man, I totally agree.
And I got to be a part of that, and I was in the thick of it.
Yeah.
And it was amazing as a 21-year-old, to get to do what I did back then, and to still be doing it is I don't take that for granted at all.
So let's back then, indie was such a big thing. You know, it was almost like there was a revolution against all of the produced pop stuff that was fed to us. Glam rock had kind of gone away, and people were hungering for a more, I don't even know if organic is the right word, sound. People were taking sounds and put it on its ear, and indie became a thing. Wide Mouth Mason recorded an indie album that was so good you guys got signed. It's kind of the yes. stereotypical dream. Got signed, yep. re-recorded that album, and that album kind of blew up. And you're 21 when that happened?
Yeah. I was probably maybe 20, actually, 21. So, leading up to that, high school, I lived the changeover from glam to grunge, because in high school, you're searching for music to like, and I didn't like anything I was hearing.
Yep.
I was just listening to what my brothers were listening to, which was Led Zeppelin and the Police, and I could care less about the bands that were popular at the time, except for maybe like the Black Crowes. There was always one or two that were great.
Yep.
And then I remember getting picked up from my buddy who's the drummer of my band, in high school, and he was blasting Bad Motorfinger.
Oh,
and I
my
was
God.
like,
Soundgarden was, yeah.
I was like, what's this? And he's like, oh man, you haven't heard this yet? I'm like, no. And then I went from that to Pearl Jam 10.
Yep.
And I mean, we already had the Chili Peppers. Blood Sugar was out when
Absolutely.
I was in grade 12. And then all these other amazing bands we discovered from that. Nirvana was right in there.
Yep.
And all the grunge bands. I love Stone Temple Pilots, probably the
Sure.
most out of all of those bands.
Fantastic.
Just because I really just liked, they were just a little more rock and roll, a little more,
Oh, yeah.
a little more melodic and just more rock and roll than maybe those other bands. But I loved, Soundgarden for sure. And that influences what the music and the band I'm going to be in, coming up. But we also loved old rock and roll as well. So when we were touring, pre getting signed with Warner,
Yep.
pre making our thing, it was, not a lot of people know, but we played 2 or 3 years worth of like bars and venues that would just ruin you, that would make you hate playing live and quit, so
Yeah.
so I got put through the hard training.
It was a trial by fire.
Yeah, it was a trial by fire and very hostile crowds. And it didn't help that we were a multicultural looking band. I'm Filipino Canadian, our drummer was Pakistani Canadian, and playing in
a blues band.
Well, not only that, but even before we got to play blues band, we were playing all just like beer commercial cover songs to get us through these gigs, right?
Yep.
And it was very hostile because sometimes gigs that I'll remember the most is playing in Provost, Alberta, which is the Aryan Nation capital of Canada. Wow. So yeah, we'd have the KKK showing up at our shows.
Oh my God.
Wanting to like murder me, right? So,
oh my God.
So I got through that, and and to be able to come back to that same bar, being a scared 19-year-old to now a veteran 21-year-old, and being kind of owning the room and basically forcing them out with our music, because it would be so busy and packed with people dancing that everyone would just drive them out. So it was really a big confidence boost. And that's when we graduated to the blues scene.
Yep.
We called it the Z circuit. So we got out of the Z circuit because there's the A circuit, which is like all the big bands in Canada. And
in the States, it's the Z circuit.
The Z circuit.
The Z circuit in Canada.
There's the B level circuit, which is, the bands trying to get up to that A circuit. And then there's the Z, which was what we were doing. But we knew if we stuck to it, playing every night, playing 7 nights a week, we were going to get really good. Yep. And our whole goal is original music. We fund all these cover band gigs to fund our buying a vehicle, buying gear, recording, that leads me to the indie album. And we recorded that on a chicken farm in southern Alberta, real close to the Aryan Nation. We hung out there a lot, actually. I got so used to it. And then getting signed eventually, we went from blues band to all of a sudden playing. We were backing up blues guys from the States, who was very intense. You really had to, it's where I got my chops. Yep. Being able to read signals and just be heads up, when there's going to be a key change, when there's going to be shots, when there's going to be anything. And it was like James Brown, you would get fined like $5 every time you made a mistake. So you could end up at the end of the night owing them money, it was like that. Right. So we got through that, and I just felt we were like invincible after that. It's like, I felt like we
bulletproof.
Knew, now all we get to do is play our own music, and people are going to listen to it and buy tickets. And like, that was a piece of cake compared to what we went through, but I don't think we would have gotten to that level had we not gone through that though first.
Well, we talk about perseverance, and we're going to talk about that a lot in this podcast, because you have seen elements. It seems like it's funny when people think about rock stars. Many times they don't think that, these people are actually humans that actually have the same problems that everybody has. It just happens to be a different genre, but they don't see that. And I can imagine that with the success of your indie album that got re-recorded and then you're signed and all that stuff, people must have looked at you like you're an overnight success. But at the end of the day, an overnight success that was years in the making and going through a lot of trials by fire in the making to get there.
Absolutely. Just so many shows, so many sets, so many valuable like experiences that just toughened you up and made you not only as a person, you have to be like mentally strong to get through that. And I'm just lucky I have the upbringing I did. My mom and dad, I mean, they moved to Canada from the Philippines in the mid 70s, and I was born right after they got here, and we struggled, right? And it wasn't an easy upbringing, but it was a great upbringing because it was just lots of love and lots of music and growing up to be strong mentally. And I think that's what got me through those shows, like my mom especially, she's a rock, like she's unwaverable,
Is that where you got your work ethic?
You think
100%. that's my
because
parents,
of it? Yeah, my parents for sure. Yeah, they worked so hard to just give us a good life, the best life they could. Things were really bad in the Philippines when they left. They were under the rule of a dictator and there's martial law, and they just didn't feel safe there. So they came here, and it was just really cool because I was able to, I think when musicians and people can't handle certain situations, I understand, because I'm just like, if you're mentally, even there's any bit of fragility in your mental health, you're not going to make it through what I made through. Right. It's going to be impossible. Right. So,
well, I appreciate you even saying that. And I think we're going to get to some of that stuff, the perseverance stuff. But before we do, let's kind of paint a picture. Sure. Okay. You're that 21, you're 21, you're at this place, you've gone through that first gotten to that first peak, knowing there are other peaks to come, but the view of this one's pretty damn cool.
Yeah.
Within a few years, like we're not being braggadocious or exaggerating anything. You opened for the fucking Rolling Stones. You opened for AC/DC. You opened for ZZ Top. You were on festival circuits with some of the biggest bands in the world at the time. Green Day, Foo Fighters, when they were really cutting they were hot and new and all this stuff. Never mind the countless other bands that you have played with. And you secured yourself among Canada's top indie bands out there with a sound that was entirely your own, amazing musicality to it. You had amazing harmonies and out of a 3-piece, you had a loud, big sound. Yeah. My God, you must have some stories.
Oh yes. We don't have enough time for all of them, but if we go back to 96, we put the indie album out. The first biggest opportunity we got was opening for Big Sugar across Canada. And I was a huge Big Sugar fan. Absolutely. Like I would pay money and wait in line to go see them playing clubs in Saskatoon. Yep. So when we got that opening, because we got signed to the same agent as them, was Ralph James. And our music hadn't come out yet from Warner. That was not until maybe 4 or 5 months later. So no one really knew who we were opening for Big Sugar. And I just remember that was one of my best memories is, smoking weed with Gary Lowe, the Rasta bass player in the band, who was my hero at the time. And I was just like, this is amazing. This is like, I was on cloud 9, Well, and talk about a bass player, because I mean, you're bass and vocals, R.I.P.
right?
Gary Lowe.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, you look at Big Sugar at that point, any band that had band members, because I mean, so many people, when they think about their favorite bands, they think about the front man, but there are other bands where they think of other members. You talk about him and Big Sugar. He had a big personality in that band.
Him. Yeah, I watched him every night, like a hawk, and that influences me today. The music I'm making, the bass player I am today Gary was a big part of that. And then, things just snowballed because things took off. The biggest opportunity we got was once Warner, where we were also label mates with Collective Soul. Yeah. And then Warner did something really smart, and they had us open for Collective Soul at the Opera House in Toronto on a night where it was every main person, program director from every big radio station was there at that show. It was a show for them.
It was an industry show.
It was an industry show for them. Oh, and we got to play in front of them and I guess blew them away so that the minute our first single came out, which was maybe 2 weeks later, it almost hit number one. You know, it was so close. I think it was like number 3.
Yeah.
You know, Third Eye Blind screwed us over on that one. They were number 1 forever at that time. With that stupid one song they had. And but then it's that ZZ Top would have been the next biggest band. We did an arena tour across Canada with them, and that was cool. Going into, you know, venues where they had all the they're like cars a lot, right?
Oh, for sure, yeah.
Once I got to the venue and there was like these huge classic cars, some of them like on fire and some of them just like bouncing up and down. I'm like, what are we getting into here? Like, we're playing with ZZ Top.
Yeah.
We covered these guys during our ZZ circuit days, right?
Oh, I got goosebumps right now as you say that.
And the thing that gave me a lot of confidence, there was a lot of confidence boosters along the way. Our manager, we had 2 managers, a business manager and kind of an artist manager. And the artist manager was an amazing guitarist named Ross Demude. And you could close your eyes and put him and Clapton side by side and you wouldn't be able to tell who's who.
Wow.
He was the biggest influence on me and on Sean, our guitarist. Sean wouldn't be as good as he is if we didn't have Ross.
How important are mentors? Like mentoring is so important.
It was massive for us. When Ross, you know, we were playing the Sidetrack Cafe in Edmonton, which is a legendary place. You know, after a show, once he told me that he felt like I'm doing it, like I've got it. You know, he's like, you're there. Just keep on going with it. You're there right now. And I just was like, that made me like blossom hearing that. So now we're on stage with ZZ Top and I'm seeing their sound check and I'm just like, we were such on fire at that time, playing every night. We were super tight. I knew what I was doing on stage performance wise. I was, you know, it felt seasoned and, you know, like the young guns. And I was like, not to sound cocky, because I'm not a cocky guy, but I was like, I was worried we were going to just destroy them off the stage. Like, I didn't even want to try my hardest so to not make them look bad, because they were really old at the time.
At the time they were,
could barely move around. And I'm like, this is not going to go well for, like, if we come out guns a-blazing, it's going to make the show feel so flat and they're going to kick us off tour.
Well, and you think about it. Okay. So I'm a music fan and I have seen a lot of concerts where the opening band is the stark contrast of the main act. Yeah. And, you know, whether the opening band's job is to get us, you know, in the, I've heard rumors, you know, theories, I should say, where like, it's the first band, they're designed to let the little hairs in your ears go down a little bit. So the other band sounds better. You know, that's a real, but also I've seen shows where the opening band complements, you know, and you on paper would totally fit ZZ Top, but would overshadow them.
we were too good, and we had a hot single out on the radio. Midnight Rain was climbing.
Yes, oh, classic.
And I took my foot off the gas a little bit on that tour because I didn't want to get kicked off. So I only played like 80%. Just so we stayed on tour, and I think it worked because we didn't get kicked off. Yeah,
and in honor of a legendary band.
It's been the only time in my life where I didn't give it my all, but it was for good reason. Yeah, because I was just like,
it's respect.
It was respect. Yeah,
100%.
I wanted those guys to. I didn't want to make them look bad, you know. And it's funny, right? Yeah. But when we got to the Stones, I'm like, they're still so good.
Also a blues band. Also a blues band.
Perfect fit.
Perfect fit.
And I felt like, okay, I can go all out. Because no matter what we do, the Stones are going to steal the show.
Was that a stadium tour?
Yeah.
That was a stadium tour.
Yeah,
what the fuck was that like? Like playing in front of 60, 70,000 people like that. And you're a 3-piece.
Yeah.
Were you a 3-piece on the road for those, or did you add an extra piece or two? You're always just 3-piece, even in a stadium.
We were never anything more, no.
That is crazy to me.
I remember our first 2 shows were at the Bell Center, at Molson Center at the time in Montreal. Yep. So they did 2 because it was only 20,000. Right?
Yeah, you're in arenas at that point.
And my brother, I have 3 older brothers. So the one closest to me in age, he's like 4 years older than me, called me out of the blue and was like, "Hey, so my doctor," I'm like, saw my last name when I was getting a checkup, and he's like, "You're not related to Earl Pereira, are you?" And he's like, that's my little brother." And he's like, "They're on tour with the Rolling Stones like coming up soon. That's my favorite band." And my brother was like, "Oh yeah, that's cool." And he was like, "Think you could get me and my wife 2 tickets to the show?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know. Like I could see." He's like, "If you do, I will fly you and your wife to Montreal to as well. We'll pay for everything." So my brother called me up. He's like, "Can you get 4 tickets to the Stones?" "Well, I can get you 4 tickets and 4 backstage passes."
Yeah.
"Bro, if you're coming, like I got this, man." So he told the guy, and the guy did. The guy did it, and they all flew to Montreal. And my brother was there with his wife at that show. And the most memorable thing about that whole thing was we walked into Molson Center during sound check, and the crew is notorious for hating opening bands. They don't like anybody. You know, doesn't matter if you're No Doubt or Big Sugar, they're not going to like you.
Yep.
Right. And they'll give you nothing. You'll get like the smallest channels possible, the least amount of lights for your show.
Yep.
And that's what they do, right? Because when the Stones come out, they got to look really amazing, right? Yep. And so yeah, we weren't getting treated very well when we got there, and I was like, I just kept my head down and just like, okay, I'm setting up my stuff. And we had his tour manager. Her name was Gilly Crowder. Her name is Gilly Crowder. I love her to death. She's a Brit who moved to Nashville, but back in the 70s and 80s, she would tour manage the Police. She tour managed Jeff Beck. She tour managed any band that was huge in the 80s from England. She tour managed them. Sex Pistols even. Queen. Everybody.
She's got some stories.
She's got stories. So she rolls in. Their tour manager / sound guy. "Gilly, what are you doing here?"
Oh my God.
Give her a big hug. She's like, "These are my boys." He's like, "These are your boys." She's like, "Yeah, these are my guys."
Night and day.
Full light show. He put us on the jumbotrons, which they don't do for opening bands.
Wow.
And it was awesome because that just makes our show go over that much better, right?
Yeah.
So people that come are like, "Oh, these guys are a big deal. They're getting on there on the jumbotron. That's weird." And at the end of our show, we got a standing O from the audience, but that's not what I cared about. When I was walking off stage, we had a standing O from the crew.
When you can pop the crew, that is a phenomenal feeling. Yeah.
And that just made the rest of the tour go so smooth because I was just like, the crew likes us, and like, this is crazy. And then my dad and mom flew them to Toronto for the Sky Dome. Yeah. And there was 70,000 at that show. And I almost fell over because I was I don't know, the Stones do this thing where they turn all the lights on in the building. Yeah. And the sound guy did that for us, thinking that we would like that. And I didn't like that because it gave me vertigo. And I spent like the last 3 songs trying to just stay on my feet. Cause I was like, I see my dad. I'm like, okay, I'm going to focus on my mom and dad. Cause I'm going to fall over and it's going to be bad. People are going to laugh. And I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. So I was just trying to stay on my feet. Detroit, I got to fly my sister out to that show. And that was the show we actually met them all. The show my sister came to was the show where we actually met the whole band. And
how far into the tour was this at this point?
It was the last show.
It was the last show.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we played Detroit at the Palace.
Yep.
And my sister was just hanging out in the doorway, not wanting to interfere. And we're in there with the full band. We're only missing Mick. And
unbelievable.
And next thing, all of a sudden, I think I hear Keith Richards be like, "Oh, they finally showed up for the photo," and points to the doorway. And he's standing right beside my sister, like touching. And they're about the same height too, about 5'2". And my sister I remember looking over and seeing her turn her head and just being like completely like frozen, starstruck. She ended up doing this radio tour because everyone wanted to interview her about her experience. Never mind you guys. Meeting them on tour with us, right? So that was really cool. She got to be famous for a little bit there.
Okay, Earl, I got to ask, and I mean, we could do an entire podcast just on the nostalgia of the 90s
and things. There's too much.
Well, no, I got to ask this question though. You're that age.
Yep.
science has said that men's brains don't even stop developing till they're 27, 28 years old. I got to ask the question about the three of you guys, small town Canada boys. Suddenly you're in the room with the Rolling Stones. You're on tour with all these things. These crazy things are happening. How or did you guys keep your egos in check when it came to that? Like how it must be so tempting to just, when the cake's in front of you, you just start eating cake and you just keep eating. Like how did you keep it in check? And what lessons did you learn from that experience growing into a man?
It's I think it comes down to your upbringing. And I'm the youngest of 5 from a very modest home, hardworking, blue collar kind of family. And we're a very, very tight knit family. And that always kept me grounded. I can't speak for the other guys. Yep. Because they're only children. I think when that's the case, you're probably more susceptible to, because you haven't had anyone give you a smackdown if you get out of line. Yeah. Right. So I can't speak for them, but for myself, I never had a problem with it. I always had my family to. You were always able to be grounded. Stay grounded. Yeah. I'd come home from touring Rolling Stones and I'm living with my mom and dad. That's amazing. Taking care of my folks. Like I bought our family home we grew up in off my dad. Yeah, and so he'd have money, right, to do stuff. Go? Yeah, and I just took care of them for all of my 20s. So and I partied when I was on tour, but when I was at home, I'm at home, right? I'm just chilling out with my mom and dad, and my dog.
You're Earl. You're not the
no, and I'm from Saskatoon, and everyone knows me. Just they know me, and I don't feel like I changed at all. Yeah. You got probably a little bit. I was probably more confident. Just because.
Oh yeah, you've developed.
Yeah, developed. But, when I walk into a venue or let's say a restaurant, I know everyone's looking at me. I know everyone's talking about me, but I could handle it. Right? It wasn't a big deal. I remember I was at the Junos in Vancouver, and I was on the street corner with my brother F, who just came to hang out.
The Junos are the Canadian Grammys.
Yes, yeah, and we were recording our second album at the time. Yeah, but we were very well known in Canada, and I remember walking around downtown Vancouver and teenage girls screaming out my name, and kind of chasing after me stuff. And my brother was like, "What the hell's going on? Yeah. Why are we running?"
Wide Mouth Mason was a big deal, and still is a big deal. I still listen to your stuff and get goosebumps. Some of that stuff. I want to go to, and again, we could do hours, but we're not going to. We want to be as useful as possible as we do this. I want to go to the breakup.
Okay.
Because things are blowing up and you're on tour, yes, with legends, but also with the hottest acts of the day, the newest acts, and the industry and the genre of music was evolving right around you. You were part of its evolution, in my opinion. And at the end of the day, you guys, when the train stopped, and it was time to break up. I've read articles where you have talked about, and I just appreciate the vulnerability. On this podcast, vulnerability has come up, whether it's life coaches, whether it's whatever, vulnerability has come up so many times. Yes. And how men need to kind of access that vulnerability if they want to deal with the hard things. Yeah. And I've read some articles where you've come out and talked about this, how difficult that breakup was, how it is like a divorce. That's one of the quotes, for sure. How it hit you. And you knew it was over. And even though there were still good things or whatever, you knew it was over. You knew it was time to move to a different phase. The Steadies were around at that point? The idea of the Steadies was there?
There was a band in between that I was... Okay, so it would have been by the mid-2000s. Yep. Where the train was slowing down. Yeah. There was a lot of factors that came into play to make things sort of... it was just a downward spiral, right? I getting to the point we got to is a double-edged sword, and I can only imagine how much worse it is for super famous bands, right? Mm-hmm. It's just a lot of pressure. It takes away from the reasons why I wanted to do in the first place wasn't anything to do with any of that. Yeah. I just love playing music and making people feel good and getting to make a living out of it. Right? Yeah. I was happy as a clam before we got signed, being able to play shows, play our own music, play some covers, but they're covers that I want to play.
Sure.
Stevie Wonder, and Stevie Ray Vaughan, stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
Prince, and have enough money to like pay for gear and
not have to have a day job
and send money home to my folks. Like I thought I was successful then. To me, that was success. You know, I had my own place, and so for when things got bad, it's when the business sort of takes away from the joy. And I think that's what I was feeling, like there's no more joy in doing this anymore. It felt like a job.
Right.
Except when I'm on stage performing in front of fans. That to me was like the reason that kept me going in that band, was to get to do that every night.
Yep.
I love that. Right. And but everything else wasn't good anymore. Even by the time we did AC/DC, which we played 35 shows all over North America, every arena you could think of.
Amazing, but a grind.
I'm at Chicago Stadium, like taking pictures in front of the Jordan statue because I'm a massive Michael Jordan fan.
Right
and it was at the peak of them winning championships, and I'm there, you know, playing in that place. And I just remember that show specifically. I live in the bus and I've got no one to hang out with. I'm trying to make friends with like random people, because we, at that point, weren't really getting along. It was like, I don't know. It was just, this was like 2002 or 3, and it was already, I felt like it was done then.
Yeah.
Like
it was a plant with no water. It's just,
as far as the joy and the happiness and the camaraderie and that affected the creative side. Because then this was another big thing. Not only was the business kind of ruining things for us, and with record sales dropping because of Napster and record labels panicking, there was that.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, yeah.
But then there was also feeling like I didn't have a real creative voice in the band anymore. If anything, like my roles were getting diminished, and I'm just like, you know what, I have a lot to say, and I have a lot of songs that the guys didn't ever want to play, and I'm like, you know what? I just said, instead of complaining and being depressed about it, because there was a time where I got a taste of depression, and I'm lucky the fact that mental health is intact, and I haven't had anything happen to me in my lifetime to make to damage that, except for this. This was probably one
of your biggest trials that you've ever been through from a mental perspective or emotional perspective. Knowing
that we were so close to being really well known around the world. I mean, we were on Atlantic in the States, and this it all slipped through our fingers in a sense, right? And then creatively, you know, I want to have a voice, and I want to be able to write, and I can't do that. So I take it out on my performing. If that's the only thing I'm really allowed to do is be a tornado on stage, then
there's your outlet.
I guess that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
But I knew I had more to give than that. So I started another band on the side when we weren't touring, because our touring slowed down.
Yeah.
We went from playing 300 shows a year. Yeah. Yeah. 300 shows a year, you know, to 250 to 200, 151. It just kept dwindling down till it was 20, 25,
right,
and 30. And I'm like, you know what? I need to play. I'm going to start a band with my buddies, some family members, anyone that wants to play music, and I'll use the songs that I've written as my outlet, and you know, my influence from like guys like Gary and like the Police and Bob Marley. I'm like, I'm the front guy, and what makes sense to me the most is to make it reggae be the base.
And this is where I'm just blown away, like, because you went and you kind of, Wide Mouth Mason turned blues on its ear, as far as I'm concerned. It took blues and then accentuated it with the 90s sensibilities that were there.
Yeah.
And made it kind of cutting edge again. Then you go and, I mean, there's this middle band, but then you move to the Steadies, which I think would, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but is that idea realized? Because that band, like I look at like bands like Sublime and things like that, and I can see 100%. Influences.
Yeah.
But I mean, oh my God, you took reggae, first generation Filipino Canadian from Saskatoon, going up there and taking reggae and again, adding your little personality to it and your own little spin on it.
Oh, yeah.
Happy, positive music. I mean,
Funky.
Oh
Yeah.
God. Yeah, totally. That's you.
That's me.
Your default is to be happy.
Happy and groovy. That's what it's more. This is me, right? This gets to be the sound I get to make.
Yeah.
And lyrically, I felt like songwriting was probably my weakest skill.
Yeah.
Back in the day, and so I knew and singing, so I knew I had to get those two things up to speed. You know, I could perform and play the crap out of a bass, and own a stage. But doing it as a front guy is a whole different ballgame.
Right.
You know, and so it was like a relearning skill, like, and rehoning skills. So basically the last 5 years I was doing Wide Mouth. I was doing my own band, playing probably twice as many shows.
Yep.
And getting those skills up.
Yep.
You know, singing every night.
Did you enjoy going back to the small
learning how to
venues again? The club, like
I did.
Yeah.
I loved it because, like I was telling you before, none of the stadiums and the fancy record company parties, I didn't care.
Yeah.
I still don't care about it.
Yeah.
It was fun, and I was like, that was cool, but I care about playing music for people who really love live music and really want to hear and feel something. That's what I'm all about.
You and I were talking about venues that we love earlier. A shared venue that we
Yep.
both have is the Commodore in Vancouver.
Yes.
I mean,
Not a small venue, but it's a
smallish though. Like
yeah.
to see your biggest band. Like I've seen Lenny Kravitz there.
Yeah, it's like,
I've seen
1,400, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But if you decide that you're going to get to the front and whatnot, you can have a moment as a fan where you connect with the band or the artist on stage.
Yeah.
And I can imagine that would be something, because it's reciprocal, clearly.
Yes.
Clearly, if we as a fan are connecting with the artist on stage, the artist has to be there to connect as well. And
yeah, it definitely is. It's like a symbiotic thing.
that thing must have disappeared when you're playing the Sky Dome, and
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's definitely a lot harder, more challenging for sure. So I do like the intimate. Don't get me wrong. I love being on a big stage.
Sure.
It's more room for me to jump around.
But
and
it's a
run around.
different experience though.
Different experience. Yeah. And I don't prefer one over the other. It's all good to me. So now I was at that point where we hit the breakup, and we were playing like the Vancouver, it was the Vancouver 2010 Olympics.
Yeah.
And we're playing at the gold medal hockey game. We were the band playing in between periods for that game. Right. And I was just like, you know what? After that show, I was like, what more can we do? Yeah. What more can I do in this band? We achieved everything.
That's a cherry on top of a pretty awesome Sunday.
Yeah, that we wanted to do. Everyone's kind of paths were starting to go different. Those guys were, married and starting to build families and not that interested in touring anymore. Anyways, on top of us personally not getting along great, and me creatively feeling like there's more. Yeah. I need to do more. Yeah. Because now I've got a taste of it with this, my own project. Now I really want to see where that can go. Yeah. So I was like, okay, it's time. But it's hard. I think in that article you read, I compared it to like a marriage, like a divorce. Yeah. Right? And some divorces go smoothly, and most divorces don't. And most band breakups do not go smoothly. So it wasn't an easy thing to do. It was so hard for all of us. Our fans were still just shell shocked. They just were like, what? And to this day, we still never really did a show, like a farewell thing or nothing. It was just like, we ended it, and that was that.
Are you open to that idea? If they ever came back and said, hey, let's go do a tour with, like last year or the year before when the Tragically Hip did their final thing. If somebody did a nostalgic act where it made sense, would you ever be open to something like that?
A lot of pressure and a lot of people wanting us to do that. And I haven't really wanted to go backwards like that until recently. Yeah. Sean and I sort of started patching things up and talking again, maybe 4 years ago.
I'm grateful to hear that, not as a music fan. I'm grateful to hear that for Earl the guy. Yeah. That must feel really good that you're at least at that place where you can kind of talk a little bit, and it's got to be a little bit of closure and patching up some old wounds. That's got to feel good to do that.
It does. And it's been, because it was very like that. It was like a dark cloud hanging over me. While I was trying to build the Steadies in our first 4 years, I still had that dark cloud of the breakup hanging over me. I mean, there was like a lot of legal things and lawyers were involved. So it's a business, right? It was a big business.
But that's what a marriage is like too, right? Lawyers get involved and it's big. Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, right? To finally, to be kind of at peace with everything and with Sean, who I started being band with, I mean, we were playing music together before Wide Mouth, him and I in high school. So we go way, way back. And I respect him a lot, and I respect both of those guys a lot as musicians. It was never any hatred. It was just like, it's time we got to do different things. And some people take it harshly, and but you eventually will get over it. But having said that, they're not interested.
Yeah.
I was open to it because their agent kind of was asking recently. And I was like, because there's some shows they want to play in Saskatoon in the fall and this fall. Hometown. And I was like, that would be pretty fun. Like, I think I might be open to it, but I told him I highly doubt those guys are going to want to do it. Yeah. I just had a feeling that they didn't want to do it. And sure enough, they didn't want to do it. So.
Sure. But the idea that you have this open heart and that you have moved to the place where, hey, you can take it or leave it. And you can allow them to go through their growth cycle, and no matter what happens, you're open to whatever outcome. Yeah, that's a beautiful place to be. And sometimes that's where we have to kind of go, is we have to make sure that we're all right and we're open to things. And then at that point, it's them, and we just as men just kind of got to let that go and let them have it.
And when I actually heard from him was because the guy I started the Steadies with became my brother, my best friend. His name's Justin Lee. Yeah. He passed away through a brain aneurysm in 2017.
Oh my God.
And that's when I heard from Sean, and which I really appreciated.
So it was a condolence kind of a thing?
Yeah. Yeah. And
sometimes it takes an event like that for us to shake ourselves out of some of these. Right. I don't want to say petty things, because they're not petty. They're real.
They're real things.
But they're also things that we can rise above and just be ourselves and not the professional version of ourselves. Yeah. I'm sorry to hear that.
Oh, I'm at peace with it. Yeah. He was a very special guy, and I wouldn't be here without him either. Right? But I also know that the exact same thing. What he'd want me to be doing is keeping the Steadies train rolling. Yeah. And he's there in spirit, man. I know he is. Unfortunately, last year, our number one fan, my dad, we lost him last year.
God, we're going through right now in our mid-40s age. All of our friends are losing our parents.
Old age, he was 78. Yeah. Loved music. He was my biggest influence, my biggest supporter, and the most honest person I knew when it came to criticism. He had no qualms about telling me if we sucked, or the sound sucked, or
family has a special way of doing that.
You got to do this better. You're not doing this good enough. And if I did do it well, and he'd tell me, then I'd be like, oh, okay, then that was a good show. Then if my dad says it was on point, then we were on point.
It's important to have that in our lives.
Yeah, it is,
because there's a lot of people who will just tell you what you want to hear.
Yep.
If you can find somebody who will tell you, even better if they can tell you with love, but can tell you the real truth about shit. That's always a beautiful thing to have.
It is. And that's when I heard from both the guys. I hadn't really talked to Saf in 10 years, 9 years or something like that. And he reached out, just give me condolences for my dad, because my dad was important to those guys too. He was at every show, number one fan, like I said, right? And number one fan of the Steadies too. So, and we lost him just before the pandemic. So I don't think he would have made it anyways through this last year. So,
well, and speaking of this last year, I mean, okay, so the people who I've felt for, other than, of course, I mean, people who have had the health concerns and lost people and or have been separated from their loved ones. Those are the people that I really, of course, feel for during this pandemic, this unprecedented time in our lifetimes anyway. But then I think about folks who I know who make their living in the arts. Mm-hmm. Whether it be, big crowd shows. I know a lot of musicians. I know a lot of pro wrestlers. I know a lot of people who are in these heavy public laden fields. Yeah. And they're creatives. They're all creatives. And when you take away, when a pandemic like this shows up, for a lot of folks, it can really take away the juice that it takes to make them tick. How have you been during this pandemic? Have you been knocked on your ass, or have you been writing and actually using it as a trying to use it as a stepping stone to something greater when things return.
Well, it did affect me quite a bit. I mean, again, I was fortunate to be, the Junos were in Saskatoon that year, right? We're supposed to be. And the first event of the week was a Wednesday night, and it was me and Jay Semko from the Northern Pikes. And we were doing a songwriter night, and that was the only event the only Juno event that happened was ours. The world shut down the next day, and Junos, of course, was canceled.
Yep.
Nobody came to Saskatoon, and so it was scary seeing all that stuff happen in March, and then getting to April, and really can't go to anywhere. Restaurants are closed. Everything's closed. Everyone's panicking.
All your gigs are canceled.
I think that's the thing that panicked the most about was like, this is our 100% our income. Yeah. What are we gonna do?
Yeah.
What are we gonna do? And I was worried. I wasn't sure what was gonna happen. And then the government, stepped up and helped people in need, and artists are definitely the industry that got hit. Not, I wouldn't say the hardest, but the point where the last to open up.
Oh,
right?
100%. Yep.
So,
definitely.
So as things started opening back up that summer, and people were getting back to work a little bit here and there, and I was like, screw it. We can do outdoor shows. There's no one saying we can't. Let's tour. I got the boys together, Steadies, my Steadies guys. Shout out to all of them. And we played last summer, and Canadian Musician Magazine actually caught wind of it and did a big spread on us as like the only band like kind of on tour. Yeah.
And you were being safe. It was outdoor shows and all of that.
We were being safe, and it was outdoor. And it was just so great to do that again. And it only lasted so long. Maybe in the fall, we did a little acoustic tour. And then that was the last time we played together.
Then it got cold.
As the Steadies. Then the next wave hit, and then things were shut down again. Yeah. And but something really great happened out of that too. Like, I was writing, definitely. I wrote a lot. I put out a single last summer, the first thing I've ever put out on my own. Yeah. And I collabed with an artist on Vancouver Island, and her name's Ali Bernardi, and we wrote a song about couples that were separated during COVID, like American Canadian couples. Couldn't see each other, for they were like basically sent home to their home countries, and had to wait it out for like 4 or 5 months before they could see each other again.
What's that single called?
It's called Coming On. So we wrote that song about that, and
it's under, if someone wants to search, it's just
under my name,
under Earl Pereira.
I mean, we just thought it was like a really heartbreaking, important issue to talk about, and made for a really good song, important song for people to hear, and just to show some support, right? So we put that out, and we shot a music video while we were in Tofino, and which came out this summer. And so we did a lot actually during the pandemic. In the fall, we toured as much as we could. I probably played 30 shows during COVID.
That's got to feel, at least you can say that. And you
not streaming shows,
real shows.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because in Saskatchewan, things have been probably the better slightly than anywhere else.
Yeah, in the middle of Canada seems to be there's over here on the west, and then on the east there, but in the middle it seems to be fairly level.
Everyone follows the rules in Saskatchewan, right? And does what they're told. And so that lent well for things when things open back up again. But even before that, we seeing the work we put in and the music we were putting out this year, because we had just put a record out. Mm-hmm. So we couldn't really promote it because of COVID, but lack of shows and whatnot. But we did what we could, and that got attention from a record label, and we ended up doing a deal. So now the Steadies are signed.
Fantastic.
To a Vancouver-based record label, Bristol Records. And they just saw how hard we were working in a time where you shouldn't be able to do anything, and that we were willing to risk it and put ourselves out there, and saw that as a sure bet, right, to a band that's probably going to go places. So let's help them out.
I hate that this has gone. Time gets slippery when the cameras turn on. I hate
no
that that's
worries.
happened.
Yep.
But I want to finish off with this point because it's so damn important. In my personal development life, anytime I've had coaches that have helped me, try and take things to the next level, whether it's on a personal, emotional side, a business side, whatever. The saying that keeps coming back is champions are made in the off season. And when there's an off season, whatever it is, when life gives us an off season, whether it's it is a divorce or it is a band breakup or a friendship breaking or whatever, or a fucking pandemic, that is an off season that gives us opportunity if we choose to look at it that way. And I'm so damn impressed with what you just said. And I think that success leaves clues. And when you think about the fact that, you're in a band that, get venues and artists, they have been hit by a 2x4 professionally when it comes to this pandemic. And not only did you guys write some stuff, not only did you try and find ways to safely do tours and stuff. And by the way, for anyone out there, if you want to listen to some music that'll take your mind off of the pandemic, listen to the Steadies, because it's happy and not in a poppy way, though, in a cool way, in a really cool way with a reggae vibe. Like, I love the sound. It's so good. And it's so positive and so uplifting. Like, I think about, well, it's the truth, man. I think about the idea of going to see a band in an outdoor venue going through what we're going through right now. That's the band I want to see. That's the band that's going to take my mind and take my feelings and put them to a different place, even if it's temporarily. So the Steadies is awesome. You guys are fantastic. Thanks, and I just hope that everybody can watch for a tour that's going to have, not you guys are signed and you've got some of that clout behind you. I hope there is a North American tour that's coming, and I hope you guys can stretch your legs in a big bad way soon.
We're gonna tour, all right. And even on this tour, I mean, it's 17 shows in August.
Fantastic.
I haven't played that many shows in 1 month, and I don't even know how long. But it's been an emotional tour. I mean, there's been a lot of tears of joy. I didn't realize, because being in Saskatchewan, I didn't really stop playing. I was playing a gig every few weeks.
You found ways to keep going,
to stay sharp, right?
Yep.
And but some people, I didn't realize that this is the first live show in 2 years or a year and a half. And there was a lot of tears of joy, and like now they're crying. I'm at that Gilton Co in Vancouver in Gastown. The crowd was crying, and then we did a song for Juice and my dad, and like, because my dad saw us at that venue, and I was pointing to where he was sitting, and then I started crying, and then my bandmates are crying. Everyone was crying.
So cathartic.
It was.
And we can choose to have these experiences. We can choose to have these experiences coming out of this, and to turn the negative into a positive. A forest fire leaves beautiful greenery and flowers afterwards, and we can choose to look at it that way. And you're a guy that does that.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, for sure. And I'm a very positive person, and I advocate, positivity and just trying to make the world a better place. But that sounds corny, but that's really all I'm trying to do. If we can make a mark in some other countries that I want to be in, like we've already toured internationally. We've done an Asia tour. We've done Europe. We're going to do Australia, New Zealand, and then all the other ones again. Amazing. So there's just so much to do and so much to see still. Like, I feel like I'm just kind of like halfway through.
You're hitting your stride.
Yeah.
I feel like that too. At 45, I'm hitting my stride.
I absolutely, man. I feel like I'm on the top of my game right now. And the band hasn't sounded better. The shows have been, we're sounding exactly how I dreamed and hoped we could be one day. And we're sounding like that now. And I think it's making a big impact with audiences and the amount of, response we're getting, and new followers are skyrocketing. And
I can imagine.
It's just, the momentum is just awesome right now. I remember this feeling. I had this feeling like 20 years ago, 20 some years ago. And I'm kind of feeling that again.
I hate to end this. When you said, I hope that doesn't sound corny, but I want to make the world a better place. Like that doesn't sound corny in this room, or anything associated with any of the people I'm around, because my wife and her team are building an app to try and make the world a better place to be there for guys,
I love that.
Yeah, that was
so
the
much.
first thing you said when you found out. Like, and Earl and I got introduced by a mutual friend. Shout out to Michael Freeman, by the way.
Michael Freeman, you should
Yeah.
ask him how the boat party was last night. 'Cause he was there.
I will definitely ask him how it went. And I just want to say thank you very much for responding the way that you did when you heard about what He Changed It is trying to do. Thank you for making the world a better place with your music, and thank you for being you, man.
Oh man, no, thank you for having me. And I mean, new music that's coming out is going to be like I was telling you, some of the subjects and content are about mental health and how to help people try to get through it. So that's what we're trying to do, man. It's not just the sound, but it's the lyrics, it's the words that people need to hear too. I take pride in my songwriting now, more than ever before. I feel like I'm on the top of my game doing at songwriting too, and I think that can have a big impact. You know, the sound can make people feel good, but then the lyrics, I think, hopefully will hit you know, a lot of people can connect with it and just be able to feel that. Well,
one thing that we've found out with our as we build this, and I'm gonna, I guess I just have to fucking end it. I don't want to do this. I want to talk. But
we can do this again sometime.
And good. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. We'll do part 2.
It's too much.
It's about
us to talk about.
Oh, it's so much, and I love authenticity.
I didn't even tell you about Edgefest yet.
Oh, I know.
That's a whole other thing.
Oh my god, I can only imagine. Okay, so stay tuned for part 2, where we're going to talk about Green Day and the Foo Fighters and Tea Party and all sorts of tomfoolery that went around. My god,
yeah, I got to see her up close and personal.
Oh man, you got to see Courtney Love up close and personal. That's it. We're not saying any more because that is a beautiful soundbite right there, and let people's imagination do their thing. Earl, one thing that we appreciate here, and whether it's life coaches or counselors or whoever been on, they talk about authenticity, and I think that so many men our age are trying to find out who their authentic self is.
Yep.
You clearly are being authentic. Thank you for being a guest on heCast today.
Thank you for having me. We'll do this again. I'll be back.
Thank you, sir. They go by so fast. Every single time that we do these things, time gets away from me, and I get the crew telling me how much time is there.
Shout out to Ozzy.
Shout out to Ozzy,
it, man.
He absolutely is. Thank you so much for the support so far. With He Changed It, you ain't seen nothing yet. Once again, broken record. Subscribe. If you subscribe, share, whether it's YouTube, whether it's on Apple, Spotify. Thank you so much for everything. All of the support so far. We're feeling it. We're moving it. We're going to move that needle. Download He Changed It. Share it with your friends. For heCast, the official podcast of He Changed It, my name is Mike Chisholm. Go change something.